Hello, everyone. So first of all, I hope everyone's ready. You have your water, favorite type of beverage with you, all the conveniences you need to stay on this call. So I'm Anna Kelian. I'm from Beirut, Lebanon. And I want to hear, where are you from? Tell me in the chat, please. Latvia. Hello, Gert from Latvia. Melissa from Canada. Awesome. Venta, you guys are in New Jersey. Slovenia, Canada, Brazil. Oh, Qatar. Oh my God. I go to Qatar a lot. Canada, France. Oh, wow. Nice to have you all with us. I mean, we are all here from across the world on Zoom. Isn't this convenient? Right? And how many of us would have known each other if it wasn't for the Lifebook online community? I'm so grateful that Vishen and John and Missy brought Lifebook to Mind Valley. And now we are part of this team and this community all together. And that's a great convenience. I mean, who doesn't love conveniences? And sorry, I have to go. I need to switch my slides and I don't want to be on the slides. So who doesn't love conveniences, right? We all have so much to do. I mean, look at your strategies for each of your categories. How much do we want to do? A lot. But we won't be able to do this if we don't choose conveniences. Like, we want to do them with ease. We want to do them with the least amount of effort, without hindrance, as fast as we can. We want to read 10 books or 20 books. I don't know, we want to do things super fast. We want the most convenient way of doing things. But when we talk about conveniences, we're not talking about something stereotypical. Like if I tell you, say, shoes or car, you can imagine it immediately. But what is a convenience? Can you imagine it? So what are conveniences? A convenience can be a product or a tool, like the remote control. It can be a service, like home delivery. It can be an environment, like shopping malls. It can be an architectural decision, like an ensuite bathroom. It can be a habit, like smoking cigarettes. It can be an action, like checking your email on your phone. Or it can even be a person, like a maid or someone very smart on your team. Or it actually can be an AI bot. Hey Siri, how's the weather tomorrow?
The weather's looking good tomorrow. Up to 19 degrees and sunny.
How convenient is that, right? So, I mean, think about it. Online schools, working from home, online shopping. Without these technologies, we wouldn't have survived this lockdown. And in Lifebook terms, conveniences are actually, when we talk about conveniences, we're touching strategies and sacred choices. We want to look for conveniences in these areas. But these strategies and sacred choices can have consequences. They can have consequences that can affect our physical and emotional well-being, as well as our other categories of our lives. So before we dive though into these inconveniences and conveniences and how do they impact our lives, I want to talk a little bit about the history of conveniences and how they helped us develop our intellect. So if we look back at our history, our distant ancestors were hunter-gatherers. For thousands and thousands of years, the evolution of our civilization was very, very slow. But at some point, it gained traction and it started to grow exponentially, right? So although I'm not an anthropologist and I'm not an archaeologist and I don't have proof of how civilizations came about, and there are a lot of books we can read about these things, But I was thinking, and I realized actually that conveniences must have played a huge role here. I believe that when we started introducing conveniences, we started meeting our physiological and security needs. And that's where we started gradually climbing Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We had less things to worry about, so we had more time on our hands. Although we were actually creating new types of occupations, needs for ourselves for the future. So our ancestors probably had only to worry about today, right? They wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh my God, I have to find food before it's dark. And I hope I make it back home safely without dying before dark. That's the only two things they were thinking about. And even on their way to find food, they had to be mindful and thinking, okay, I'm looking for food. I'm looking for food. And I'm also careful that there's no wildlife that will eat me. Or maybe I don't fall off a cliff. They were only thinking about survival all day long. But when we started introducing conveniences, we started buying time. So we moved close to water and food resources. Now we're not spending our entire day walking thousands of miles to find food or water, which meant we had more time to do nothing. I mean, we have the food, we are safe, we have time to do actually nothing. Or actually, are we doing nothing, or were we thinking, maybe I can improve this shelter, to provide protect me from the elements and from wildlife. And once we've built stronger shelters, we had more time to think about something else and to observe and to learn. And we discovered how new plants grow, and the rest is history. That's when we started to have more time to think about the future and not just worry about today. So this is when we started developing our intellect. This is my thinking, this is my theory, that this is where we started thinking, creating, innovating, and advancing our civilization and our culture. So how did these conveniences impact our life and our skills? So with each convenient solution we added to our life, we created new roles, new needs, new responsibilities, and unfortunately, we introduced new worries. And if we look at our life today, where is that time that we bought with these conveniences? Where is it? We always hear that people say, we're busy. We say, we don't have enough time. We have more needs to meet. We even have more life categories to think about. Career and finances, do you think cavemen had to worry about those? But we added so much to our lives. And at some point, I'm really worried now. Did we go back to worrying about today? Are we investing enough time to think about our future, our life categories, our actions, the things we're buying? I would say as life bookers, we actually do, because we do think about our categories. But if we think about it a little harder, are we really thinking? So here's a challenging thought. Who here felt discomfort doing Lifebook online? Remember when we watched John's videos, and there were very conveniently, there were these timers inside each video. So we take the time to write, to think and write, because I'm imagining if that timer wasn't there, I would say, I'll think about this later. And when is that later? God knows. But those timers were placed there for our convenience. But how many of us use them? I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm guilty of this. I borrowed a lot from the examples John gave. Who didn't? But because they resonated, I mean, come on, they did, didn't they? But did we really think about if there was something missing? Maybe I want those things, but I want also something different. maybe I have a different belief. Maybe I have a different purpose. Did we go deep, or did we just borrow from others because it's more convenient? So there is this saying, which is we always fall back on what is easy and convenient. So we're always going to look for the easiest things. And this is why I feel we need to be very mindful. I feel like we're not even thinking anymore. We prefer to read a book or watch a video or borrow other people's ideas instead of dedicating time to sit and think. I mean, when you have a break, do you go and sit on your own, or do you browse social media? We want to read other people's advice, other people's ideas, but we're scared of exploring our own ideas because it's not convenient and it's not easy. It's easier to just pick up the phone and mindlessly scroll through Facebook. And actually, some of these conveniences like Google, the calculator, our friend Siri, or smart devices are even doing the thinking for us. How many of us actually do calculations these days? We ask Siri, what's X times Y? These aren't bad inventions, you know, they really aren't, but we have to be mindful of how we are using these conveniences, how they are impacting our lives, and especially how they are affecting our skills. So I want to bring another quote. If you're familiar with as within, so without, or as without, so within. How many of us open multiple tabs in your browser or multiple windows on your computer, right? Or multiple apps on our phones? It's a convenience. If you're reading an article, it has a ton of links. Just command click it or open it in a new tab to read it later. And once you're done with your article, you have 10 more to read. But aren't we doing the same with our minds? Aren't we thinking about multiple things at the same time? As within, so without. And let's not forget about this culture of fast, fast, fast. You know, you have to do everything super quickly. No wonder we're feeling stressed and we feel like we need to meditate to slow ourselves down and calm our minds. Here's another challenging thought. Do we need to introduce a strategy like meditation if we were mindful throughout the day? Besides, it's really, really, really hard to meditate when your mind is going 100 miles an hour and thinking 10 different things at the same time. One thing we need to be mindful of is that our advancement was not a physical or physiological evolution. With the conveniences we introduced, our culture and mental abilities did advance, but our physical brains and physical bodies did not evolve enough to catch up. That is the reason why we're not keeping up with these advancements. That is the reason when we get all these stimuli, we're feeling stressed. Stress is the trending term in the past few decades. That's the reason why, because our minds are not capable of processing all that information yet. And I've been talking for 15 minutes, and it's very convenient to sit and listen to someone talking, right? But here's the thought. Why don't we all stand up, move a little bit for 1 second or two, and then we'll continue. Because it's convenient to sit down all day long, but it's not good for our health. Awesome. Gert says she likes to run 60 tabs. Oh my God, yeah. How about watching videos times 2 speed? Is that a good thing or, oh my God, I don't know. I don't have the answer. So let's talk about some examples of conveniences from the different categories of our lives. And as I mentioned, some examples, I want you all to think about examples from your lives, from different categories of your lives, and put them in the chat, please. So some conveniences in the health and fitness category. Fast food, food delivery, packed foods, home gyms, all conveniences. Conveniences related to intellect, ebooks, calculators on the phone. Why use the calculator when you have Siri? Conveniences related to finances, online shopping, buy now button, buy now, pay later option. And how about save your credit card information so you don't have to enter it again? Click, 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 buy, buy, buy. And I see some examples. Microwave oven, yeah, that's a convenience as well. So how do we know which of these conveniences are good? Which of them are bad? And is there an ugly side here? First, before we dive into the mental models that we can use to really see what is good and what is bad with our conveniences, I want to talk about discomfort. When we look for convenience, we're not looking for pleasure. What we're doing is we're running away from discomfort. So if you haven't watched Nir Eyal's talk with Jason Campbell, go watch that. He talks about discomfort. Discomfort and pain are loud. Comfort and ease are silent. What does this mean? It means that we don't know, when we're healthy, we don't notice that. When we're comfortable, we don't notice that. But discomfort and pain are loud. So we're looking for solutions, looking for ways to silence them. It means that there might be conveniences in our lives that are silently killing us or harming us. And we will not know these consequences until it's too late, unless we start to question everything now. Okay? So, this is why we're going to talk about 2 mental models. So there are different mental models that you can use, but we're going to talk about the 2 that I use most often. And these are the simplest ones and super helpful. First principle thinking and second order thinking. Before I explain what they are, I want to clarify that they are not related. First principle means going back to the root, to the base, to the foundation. It's active questioning of assumptions and then creating solutions from scratch. Yes, it's not convenient. Second order thinking means every action doesn't just have one obvious consequence. It has second order consequences, third order consequences. It might have tens of consequences. And we have to look at those as well. So, first order thinking, I'm not talking about first principle here. I'm talking about the first order thinking, which is when we thought about our PVPS, we probably didn't dive deeper into each of the assumptions we made, or like the beliefs we wrote and the visions we wrote. So those were first order thoughts, things that popped in our heads. So it will be a great activity if we all go back to our PVPS each month. We don't need to go through all categories. And I do this every first of the month. Next week, we're going into emotional month. You look at your PVPS and use these techniques, these mental models, to identify if these beliefs and visions and purposes are assumptions or they are true, and what are the consequences of the strategies we chose. So let's talk about this, but using examples. First of all, before I talk about these two, I want to remind you that there's another model that John Butcher proposes in one of his podcasts with Jordan River called The Power of 12. So the first thing we want to do is anytime we choose a strategy, we want to make sure that we're comparing it with all other categories and asking, how will this affect the other categories? We think about it, we visualize it, we make sure that it's not impacting negatively any other category. Because if it does, we don't want that, right? We want to have a 12 category smart life, which means we don't want to have a strategy that deteriorates our health, for example. So the first exercise we want to do is anytime we want to choose a strategy, we want to make sure it's not negatively impacting another category. Next, we're going to use first principle thinking to clarify our thinking and explain the origin of our premise and purpose behind each strategy. So when you're looking at a strategy, when you want to choose a strategy for this month, for emotions, or for next month, and so on, we want to identify, clarify the thinking behind it. Are these premises true or not? Is our purpose clearly defined? So the questions we might ask are, what exactly is my belief and reason to adapt this strategy? Why do I believe that? Does it contribute to my life vision, and how? Then we want to challenge this assumption and we want to ask, is that really true? Is that really true? Or is it just an assumption? How do I know that for a fact? And then we want to think, what if the opposite is true? Maybe we are saying, I don't have the time for this. Is that really true? Next, we look for evidence. Can we back this assumption up with facts and evidences? It might be that you might say, I want to wake up at 5 a.m. and there's a 5 a.m. club. Like a lot of people are doing it. That's evidence. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you, of course. We're not saying prove that it will work for you. Unless you try, you won't know that. But you can look for evidence from everywhere. The next question will be, we want to think deeper and find alternative perspectives. Because sometimes we might be wrong. Our initial assumption was wrong. We want to know if we are right or wrong. What are the implications if this isn't a good strategy? And then at this moment, in the first principle thinking approach, we're asking here Socratic questions. These are called Socratic questions. We stop, and because we're talking about consequences, we stop and switch to second order thinking. We want to ask why, and then why, and then why, and then why. We might ask, and then what? And why is that? And at some point, we're making assumptions for each of the whys. We might go back to first principle thinking and say, is that assumption true? So by doing this, we're really digging deep and understanding where our beliefs are coming from, and if our purpose is a very strong purpose, so we can stay on track. And one more important thing about second order thinking. When we're asking why we're choosing a strategy, we should never forget to look at the opposite as well. So for example, if let's say we're all working from home these days, and you want to say, you know what, I'm gonna build an ensuite bathroom for my home office, because if I go out after office, I'm getting distracted and whatnot. You have a lot of excuses. But when you start thinking using first principle thinking and second order thinking, you don't only see the consequences of having an ensuite bathroom, you also look at the consequences of not having it. And the consequences can be good and bad. It doesn't mean that we're looking at all the bad implications of it. We might say, if I don't have the ensuite bathroom, it means I can walk more in my house if I'm going to a bathroom that's far away from the office. Or if I have it, I don't have to move that much. Maybe that's what you're looking for. So you compare the both aspects and the opposite as well. Next, we ask, what are the consequences for everyone else in the environment? Are you sharing that office with someone else? Are you sharing the house with someone else? You can't just say, I'm gonna knock this wall and build something without asking your spouse or your siblings or your parents, whoever you're living with. How will this impact them? And you have to ask them. They have to be participant as well. The next question will be, how convenient is this convenience? Can I do it whenever and wherever? And I'll talk about an example later, but this is very important. How convenient is it? And in the end, we want to make a decision. So we ask, what conclusions can I draw from this entire reasoning process? And I'll share, once we finish the conversation here today, I'll share all these questions. They are basic questions that we use, the Socratic questions that we use for first principle thinking. I'll share it, I'll send it to Alex so he can share it with the video in 2 days. So, okay. Using these mental models and the power of 12, remember the power of 12 exercise, we can choose the right strategies and the right sacred choices without letting conveniences and trends take a hold of our lives by default. And that's what's important. Conveniences aren't bad inherently, but we want to question them. We want to make sure we are adding them into our lives by design, and they are not there by default. We're not living our lives by analogy, following other people just because they are doing it. We want to do it. We are more conscious about these things, and we are thinking, okay, I want to know why everyone is doing this, but I want to question it before I bring it into my life, not because it's a trend. Before I go into the last section, I want to see some of the comments. Yes. Awesome. So, any questions until now? Great. So why are we talking about all these things? Why is Anna talking for 30 minutes? Because we want to get to this point where it's all about living a 12 category smart life. And what does that mean? Has anyone here read Atomic Habits? and or tiny habits. So in Atomic Habits, James Clear says, if you want to do something, make it easy. Okay, I'm not saying in his own words, I'm just using my words, but if he says, if you want to do something, make it easy. If you don't want to do it, make it hard. This is great to create hacks, so we build new healthy habits, and it is great to break bad habits by making them inconvenient. But to live a 12 category smart life, we need to be able to choose where we need the ease of conveniences and where we need strategies or sacred choices that aren't as convenient. It doesn't mean they have to be inconvenient, but it means in some places we will make them a little inconvenient or less convenient, so we get more benefit from them. So we ask, it's always about asking questions. It's not a convenient process. So what kind of strategy can I choose to build this habit? How convenient does it need to be so I can check it off my 12 dot more often? This is most important. We add a lot of lofty, ambitious goals. I have one that I have never checked. It's meditation. Never, not once. Okay, maybe once in a blue moon, but it's still there. But the reason is, I'm thinking, how convenient is it? We have to make it easy to start. Alex always says, tiny steps. Make it convenient. Can I do it anywhere or anytime? Again, is this convenient? What kind of ritual or habit can I build so it doesn't cause decision fatigue every day, especially if things outside of my control change? This is important. I'm going to repeat it again. What kind of ritual or habit can I build so it doesn't cause decision fatigue every day, especially if things outside of my control change? We can't change things outside of our control, but this is one of the reasons I keep saying how convenient is your conveniences. And I'll give an example to explain more in a minute. The last question I would ask is, what systems do I need to set in place to standardize these sacred choices? And then how can I optimize them? This is important. Sometimes we want to build great strategies or perfect sacred choices. Start by standardizing. Just put a simple process in place and then gradually optimize it. Because we all love to have like the best thing. I've seen some people open a new shop and they spend so much money and time on the decor, and 2 months in, they close the shop. It's something like that. Don't waste time on the bells and whistles. Focus on the gist of it. Like, why do you want to do it? Start with simple, tiny steps, and then optimize. So for example, last year, I was doing the longevity blueprint by Ben Greenfield. It's a Mind Valley quest, where he introduces the super slow training. And there's a video of Ronan showing us how to do the super slow exercises using gym equipment, using a dumbbell, and using resistance bands. I immediately chose resistance bands. I said, I'm not going to look at the rest. I'm not going to learn them. Why? Because I travel a lot. Actually, I traveled a lot before COVID. So I knew that if I use the dumbbells, it's going to be an excuse for me when I'm traveling. Like, I don't have dumbbells in the hotel. And we're not the type of people who make excuses at Lifebook. So resistance bands, they travel with me. So I chose a convenience that is convenient, that I can do anywhere, anytime. Because once you build a habit and then circumstances change, or you have to go somewhere else, bam, you lose it. If it's not something you can do, then you lose it. And it's very important for us as life bookers to remember, again, quoting Nir Eyal, we are claimers. We don't want to be blamers or shamers. We want to claim responsibility. We don't want to blame the circumstances or find excuses. So again, reminder, we always fall back on what is easy and convenient. So the moment our circumstances change, we're going to fall off our habits, even if we're doing it for 90 days or longer. So I'm going to take a tiny break to drink some water. Does anyone have any questions? Thanks for sharing, Monica. Awesome. So if we want to build a habit, then make it easy. Create a hack. Make it as convenient as possible, but also think about self-sufficiency. We don't want, as we said, we don't want, if circumstances change, we don't want to be lacked from this convenience, this habit. Like if, I mean, during COVID, a lot of people had all the money in the world, but probably were worried about food because they never cooked. Because we have a convenience of ordering food and eating out, and COVID actually took those away from us. If we're not self-sufficient, things like COVID can really be a slap. So we want to be mindful of how we can be self-sufficient. If we want to break a habit, make it hard. Make it as inconvenient as possible. But there's another way of doing things. And this is my favorite way, which is to enjoy your habits. To enjoy your habits, you want to turn them into rituals. You want to slow down and enjoy it. Do it mindfully. And it means make it a little inconvenient. So I'll give an example. I make a green smoothie every morning. My blender doesn't sit on the counter. I have to assemble it every day, deassemble it after I make it. People will say it's not convenient. Well, I don't have the counter space to keep it out there. So I didn't use that as an excuse. And I said, I want to make this a ritual. So I assembled the blender, put in everything ritualistically, just enjoying it, make the smoothie, pour it in a mug, and I'll explain why a mug in a moment, wash the blender and put it away, and then drink the smoothie while walking around, saying good morning to the family, watching the birds, looking at nature. It's a ritual I do every single day without missing any day. It helps me start my day with a clear mind because I'm starting my day slowly. And I don't say it's not convenient. I just do it. It doesn't, actually, people say, we don't have the time. It actually doesn't take that much time. It takes just 2 minutes, exactly 2 minutes, just to assemble and deassemble the blender. So, and I'll tell you why I use a mug. I use a mug to also drink water because I'm trying to cut down on caffeine or caffeinated beverages and all those, I don't know what to call them, like powdered drinks, cappuccinos, and I don't know, this powder stuff. So, but I love drinking from a mug. So I found that if I drink water and my smoothie in a mug, I'm drinking more water, checking that box off, and I'm really not craving all those other drinks. Turns out I just enjoy the mug, holding the mug. So that's another hack to get rid of one bad habit and introduce one new habit, a good habit, which is drinking the smoothie and the water actually. So I want to also remind everyone about another, this is my mantra. How you do anything is how you do everything. This is a mantra I live with, which actually stops me from cheating sometimes and saying, oh, I don't want to do this because it's like a ritual and it takes a little more time. So for example, I also pack all my cables neatly every day. When I want to charge a device, I pull them out, charge them, put them back into their box, into my drawer. I don't like clutter. So that's one of the other kind of tiny rituals I do. And this morning I was in a hurry to go out to walk. I took my watch from the charger and I said, well, Anna, why don't you leave it outside? I mean, you're gonna charge it later tonight. And bam, my mind said, how you do anything is how you do everything, Anna. One time means it's gonna cascade and it's gonna be chaotic and you're gonna keep doing it. It's either 100% of the time or not at all. So that's very important to keep in mind. And I want to add some challenging questions. Do we really need to go to the gym if we're moving enough throughout the day? I mean, yes, we want to exercise other muscles. I'm not just saying if we're walking 10,000 steps, but I know people who go to the gym to walk on the treadmill for an hour, and that's it. And how inconvenient is that? You have to find the time, you have to wear your clothes, you have to go, you have to pay, you have to come. But if we mindfully include movement, more movement into our days, I actually walk 5,000 steps in the house alone without walking outside or on the treadmill. And when I do use those, I'm like, yes, I hit 10,000. And here's a technique you can use. If you don't use the Pomodoro technique, I highly encourage you to do that. I don't know about Windows computers, but there's an app I use on Mac called Flow, which pops a huge green screen on your face when it's break time. So you just leave the computer and move. Those 5-minute breaks throughout the day, I make sure that I have 12 5-minute breaks. So I check off my 12 dots. And I don't necessarily have to check all of them in one session. So in all of these sessions, I'm walking. So at the end of the day, I check off that I walked my minimum of 5,000 steps, which actually became 7,000 recently. So what I'm getting at is we have to question these trends. Do we really need to go to the gym? Do we really need to meditate? If we include them and make them as part of our lives, just like our ancestors, they had to walk to get to the food. So if we introduce them into our lives, wouldn't that be even better? Wouldn't that be, oh, great, I finished my work and I check off my 12 dots. I don't need to rush to the gym. Maybe I can spend some time with the family. How about that? And I want to finish with a quote by Jerry Colonna. He says, how are you complicit in creating the conditions you say you don't want? How are you complicit in creating the conditions you say you don't want? We are not complicit with our circumstances, and we do not blame or look for excuses because we are life bookers. We choose the trends and conveniences and strategies that we want to include in our lives wisely. Thank you. I have so much more to talk about, but I wanted to keep it a little short so we have more time for discussions. I hope you enjoyed this session. And please, your questions.